The Red Virgin, or La Virgen Roja, is a Spanish movie from 2024. It is based on a true story. This movie is about a mother and daughter. And I ask you, who was Aurora Rodriguez Carballera? And what made her become the obsessed narcissistic mother of Hildegard? That is what we're going to find out today. So little is known about this woman, but much is known about Hildegard because of her writings. She was conceived sometime in 1914 and born at the end of the year on December 9th in Ferrol, Spain. She died 18 years later at the hands of her mother's gun. In the meantime, she was the protege of her mother, who held her emotionally and sometimes physically captive in their home, where she was under the protection of her mother. We only have the Spanish movie, The Red Virgin, to give us some sort of a glimpse of what the screenplay writer wants us to know and to understand. In Hildegard's 18 years, her mother seemed capable of teaching her three other languages, how to type, and enough philosophical and sexual knowledge to be able to hold speeches on sexuality and feminism by the age of 11. She did so much more in real life than in the movie. She did so much more in real life than the movie wishes us to know. She actually gained a law degree by the age of 17. And she wasn't literally captive in her home, but the movie focused on this because it wanted us to understand how deep the emotional ties were. If they had showed us more, we might not have been able to feel it as much as we were supposed to. And I do not deny that this makes sense. It is a really good movie. But you will learn a lot more about Hildegard from reading about her on Wikipedia. And where can you read one of the books? Books that were written by an intellectual who was talking about subjects she had absolutely no experiential knowledge about. They were fed to her by her mother. It is possible she had love, according to the movie, but not sex. Her knowledge was about as feeble as a child thinking they should be another sex in today's day and age. Yet, I would love to find out what she had to say. Aurora is another story. She is a strange and deeply troubled woman. She first raised her sister's son, Pepito, and turned him into a musician. Somehow, and he became so good at this, her sister took him back to raise as her own. So after Aurora loses her first love, a child that was not even hers, she went on to find a way to have a child of her own. And this would be with a priest who would never admit to having had sex, so she could go ahead to raise this child, Hildegard, without a father. She turned this child into a project, and when she had failed at this mission, she killed her. So evidently, she felt she had a right to because she owned and taught this child so she could annihilate her when she became a nuisance. And how did she have this penchant for raising geniuses? Well, who knows? What I loved about this movie was the way that they used a mannequin, a sculpted piece of non-human existence, to visually show Aurora breaking down throughout the movie. You don't really need it because the actors are so good at showing without telling, but it seemed necessary for the director to drive it home. And that's okay because it makes it a visually stunning movie even more. So also the apartment in which the two women lived in, it looked somewhat like a prison, which I think is sort of foreshadowing the end for Aurora. The long hallways in the apartment with, I think I saw bars around the inner part of the home, or maybe it was a shadow of something. There was a long cascading circular stairway that conveyed suspense and drama in scenes where they were coming and going from the apartment. There was graffiti in the hallway from strangers or neighbors who were confused by the strangeness of this very eccentric mother. Aurora's obsession is much like Heathcliff's for Catherine in Wuthering Heights, although the difference being that Aurora had much more power on Hildegard than Heathcliff had for Catherine. And both women die at the end of the story. And of course, Catherine is fictional. These narcissistic delusions take control over people's minds. In Wuthering Heights, we have a dark romantic novel written in 1847 by Emily Bronte. Heathcliff broods all the rest of his life, taking his anguish out on everyone around him. Aurora has no one else except her maid, but she mostly has herself and her thoughts and a gun. So you look at the murder which occurs when Hildegard begins to want to step out of her mother's shadow and go out into the world on her own. The narcissistic mother is generally in real life, and this was real life for her, but in real life now, the narcissistic mother is on a pedestal, generally until puberty, by the child who knows no better. Hildegard may have had a young education, but she was still so very naive on the wonders of the world as she lived under her mother's thumb. So when other people began to witness Hildegard, at some point in her short life, post-puberty, she began to feel free enough to let go. She just had no idea the depths in which her mother's obsession could really go or what she was actually capable of. But Hildegard was a robot. She was a clone of her mother. She was not psychologically stable herself because she was not allowed to be herself. The Red Virgin, there's two reasons for this. There's obviously the symbolism in being a communist because the Aurora and Hildegard were communists. So it's red because of that. It's also red because of going through puberty. It's also red because of the blood that happens from her being shot, which I'll talk about in a minute. But communism is a self-absorbed organization like any other political regime, but there are people who feel they need no need for socialization. Everyone is called comrades, they are anti-theism, so they lack spirituality and they hate religion. They want everyone to form a co-op and live in a commune off of each other. It sounds romantic in a sense, but only if everyone is truly choosing this life and without the pressure of others. This never happens because someone is always in charge. Hildegard her mother is in charge. And as I said before, she never has sex. What's interesting is that her mother shoots her in the vagina and in the head. She is destroying her sexuality and the face that she wants no one to see. Hildegard is a mirror image of her mother, of Aurora, herself, the woman, destroying the woman she has created. So she's made Hildegard, she's now shooting her symbolically, and then what we're really seeing is she's shooting herself. Aurora is disgusted with herself, so she shoots the mirror, not herself. If she breaks this glass, she can no longer see what is in front of her. Now, in real life, Aurora spent the rest of her life literally behind bars and then in a psychiatric institution. I'm not clear why they changed her living arrangements. This was something I read on Wikipedia. But it's too bad that there weren't better psychologists in that day and age who understood psychopaths and narcissism as we do today. How interesting it would have been to have had a complete psychological evaluation. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the story is over, with the exception that you can find Hildegard's books and hoping that they're translated into your own language. I was unable to find them, but don't take my word for it. Go ahead and look for it. And perhaps if you speak Spanish, you'll be able to find it. Perhaps you already know this story very well. So, watching the movie, this is again a truly wonderful movie, and getting the director's cut from the screenplay writer's story. Reading Wikipedia's article on Hildegard and determining for yourself what the hell really happened here.